If you're drawn into novels that blur the line between sport and art, pain and transformation, or if you love stories that hit hard in both form and feeling, or if you know boxing isn't just about strength and footwork, but what it means to fight, not just for a title, but for identity, power, and survival, both in and out of the ring. And if you're prepared to witness teenage girls step into the ring with everything to lose and everything to prove, if so, then today's book just might be for you. Today, I'll be reviewing Headshot by Rita Bullwinkel. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan. And on this channel, I read across genres: fiction, nonfiction, memoir, poetry, fantasy, history, and everything in between. And then I tell you who I think each book is for. Today's book is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkel. It's a fierce experimental novel set at a girls' boxing tournament, but this isn't just about winning titles. It's about voice, vulnerability, violence, and transformation. But before we dive into the review, just a quick reminder, Headshot is part of this year's Pulitzer Prize Week here on my channel. I've officially read all of the 2025 Pulitzer Prize winners and finalists, and instead of slowly releasing those reviews over time, I'm dropping them all over the next couple of weeks. So if you're curious about which books lived up to the hype and which ones surprised me and which ones might be right for you, please make sure to check out the full 2025 Pulitzer Prize playlist. There is a lot to talk about. That being said, let's take a look at the author of Headshot. Rita Bullwinkel is a rising force in contemporary fiction, known for pushing the boundaries of form, voice, and narrative. She first gained attention with her 2018 short story collection, Belly Up, which showcased her talent for blending the surreal and the intimate, often experimenting with the structure and rhythm of language itself. Bullwinkel is also a contributing editor at Noon, a literary journal known for its avant-garde aesthetic, and she teaches creative writing at the University of San Francisco. Her work has appeared in publications like Tin House, Conjunctions, and McSweeney's, and she's been recognized with fellowships from McDowell, Yaddo, and the Helen Wurlitzer Foundation. With Headshot, which is her debut novel, Bullwinkel brings her formal innovation to a full-length narrative, one that blends internal monologue, physical intensity, and fragmented storytelling to examine how young women contend with pain, competition, and identity. Before we go any further, here's your spoiler warning. Well, Headshot isn't told in a traditional narrative style. It unfolds over just one weekend, and it leans heavily into interior monologues and, like I've said, the experimental form. There are still spoilers to be aware of. It's a tournament, so there will be a winner. The book may not exactly have major plot twists, but it does reveal the fates of the girls in the tournament. So there are going to be how certain matches unfold and the emotional breakthroughs and some breaking points of key characters. Part of the power of the novel is in discovering how each girl navigates the ring and what happens when the fighting stops, or what brought them there in the first place. So if you want to experience those revelations for yourself, consider pausing here and coming back after you've read the book. That being said, here is my lengthy, with spoilers, summary of Headshot. The book Headshot takes place over a single summer weekend inside the Debonair Rec Center in Reno, Nevada, where 8 teenage girls compete in a boxing tournament. The novel opens just as the tournament begins and unfolds primarily inside the ring, but not through the punches or blow-by-blow action, although there is some of that. Instead, you have the author building the narrative through a series of internal monologues and shifting perspectives and just physiological snapshots of each of the competitors. The fighters are young women. They range from 16 to 18, and each comes to the tournament with emotional weight far heavier than their gloves. Bullwinkel uses a variety of voices. There's some discussion from the trainers, some from the parents, although actually one of the things that really sticks out about this book is how much of the exterior characters are actually relatively aloof of the storytelling. You are primarily focused on the people in the rings, but you're not just focused on their moments in the rings, you are looking at their total lives. And that does include some exploration of their families and what has brought them here and what exactly they're looking into. So let's actually take a look at this. There are 8 girls playing, so you have a quarterfinal, a semifinal, and then a final round. And I will go ahead and tell you now each of the rounds. And I will, I guess, tell you who wins, because I can't move on to the next round without doing that. So the first chapter is Artemis Victor versus Andy Taylor. It, of course, opens with a psychological and physical battle between these two contrasting fighters. Andy Taylor is actually haunted by guilt from a lifeguarding accident in which a young boy drowned. It's on the very first page, so be prepared for that. It's going to be something that definitely, I don't want to say sets the tone, because you are looking at 8 different girls, and so you have 8 very different qualities, but it is certainly one thing that is going to give this a very heavy foot when you start the book. And as she enters the ring, she is going to be desperate for recognition and also a sense of redemption because of that accident. Then you have Artemis Victor. She's the youngest of a famous boxing family. She's confident, polished, and also burdened by that legacy. And the chapter delves deep into their minds and their bodies and family dynamics, contrasting Andy's chaotic, desperate energy with Artemis's ruthless precision. And you are going to see Andy briefly gain an edge by exploiting an opening in Artemis's defense, but is ultimately going to be worn down by Artemis's skill as well as her poise. So Artemis is going to win that match 5-1. Andy reflects on the trauma, the anonymity, and the ephemeral nature of boxing and boxing success. Match 2 is Rachel DeRico versus Kate Heffer. This match is a surreal clash of philosophies and mental frameworks. Rachel DeRico uses absurdity and unpredictability as a strategy. She starts out this chapter by debating whether she should wear a silly hat to help catch her opponent off guard. She believes in disrupting the expectations of her opponents. Kate Heffer is methodical. She's counting digits of pi to calm herself and trying to maintain order and structure. The fight is not just physical, but it is ideological. Rachel dismantles Kate's reliance on control and structure. Rachel wins through psychological dominance and sheer weirdness, which unnerves Kate and really throws her off her game. Kate ends up floundering while Rachel stores away visual mnemonic images to later recall this fight with real clarity. The third round is between Izzy Lang and Iggy Lang. They are twin sisters that face off in this highly anticipated and emotionally charged bout. Izzy and Iggy Lang are physically identical but temperamentally different. Izzy is volatile and confrontational, while Iggy is calm and introspective. Their match is less about victory than it is about years of unresolved family dynamics and sibling rivalry. Flashbacks to their childhood, training together, and fighting for individuality dominate their narrative in this fight. The fight is brutal, not because of malice, but because of how well they know each other's strengths and weaknesses. The match ends with Iggy winning, but both girls leave emotionally and physically shattered, unsure of whether anything was really resolved. The fourth match is between Rose Mueller and Tanya Ma, a philosophical and physical dismantling of power structures. Rose Mueller is stoic, determined, and brutally efficient, approaching boxing with an academic intensity. Tanya Ma is flashy and theatrical, treating boxing like a performance, and she actually would like to be an actress, which, well, you'll find out that that is realized, at least to a certain degree. The fight pits the sincerity against the spectacle. Tanya tries to psych Rose out with grand gestures and trash talk. Rose is unshaken. She wins methodically, which of course highlights the novel's recurring idea that boxing is a study of the body and not just a test of will. You have to actually train. You have to develop certain skills. But on top of that, there is certainly a psychological element there. Tanya fades into insignificance, while Rose's internal monologue reveals a deep sense of purpose. This is probably one of the most interesting contrasting ones, and you'll see as you go along why exactly that is. So that brings us to the semifinal rounds between Artemis Victor and Rachel DeRico. Two of the strongest personalities in this book collide in this fight. Artemis is still riding the confidence of her win over Andy, and she views Rachel as undisciplined and erratic. Rachel, who's fresh off of her win as well, that's how competition works, approaches the fight with her surreal, image-driven worldview intact. Artemis struggles to control the tempo of the fight as Rachel's unpredictability throws off her polished style. The match sees both girls pushed to their physical and psychological limits. Rachel wins in a major upset by disrupting Artemis's strategy and her momentum. Artemis, the legacy fighter, as you recall, is left reeling from the loss. This means so much to her, not just because she loves fighting, but because of what it means to her family. And so you are seeing her trying to deal with that. The next bout in the semifinals is between Iggy Lang and Rose Mueller. It is a quiet and a somewhat introspective fight, relatively speaking, considering the personality of these two, as they meet in what actually becomes a unexpected, brutal match. Iggy is still emotionally raw after defeating her own sister, And so she brings at first a sense of cool, analytical calm to the ring. And don't forget, of course, Rose is very focused and fierce. And she actually sees Iggy as her final obstacle before the championship, which, if you know anything about a bracket, that might sound obvious, but there's a certain surrealness to it in the way that she understands that as a stepping stone, and not just making it to the next phase of a tournament, but in terms of also a mental and an emotional, and yes, obviously a physical obstacle to making it to the next step. This match is close, with both girls showing incredible technical skill and restraint. The fight becomes a silent war of endurance and willpower. In the final moments, Rose lands a series of calculated hits that give her the edge, and so Rose will win. But she also acknowledges Iggy as her equal. There's a real sense of mutual respect that you don't get in all of these bouts. As a matter of fact, in many of the matches, you get a clear sense that one of them was much more eager and much more focused on the actual necessary steps to win, and not just in the bravado and the splash and the trash talk and all of that. And this is one where they actually come away respecting each other. In the final match, this is it. We have Rachel Dorico versus Rose Mueller. You wouldn't know starting out this book that those are the two that are going to end up together. That's, I think, one of the reasons why the author told the stories that she did was to try and show you just how different each person is coming into a big tournament like this, what their motivations are, what it is that shaped them as an individual, and what exactly the consequences of that are. So, in the final chapter, it is, of course, the climax of the tournament and the whole book. Rachel is still collecting images and phrases to remember each moment. And she enters it with a, I've said this a lot of times now, but I'll say it again, a very chaotic, but still somehow a paradoxically focused, chaotic energy. You have Rose, who is steady, she's cerebral, she wants to win, but she doesn't necessarily want the spectacle. She wants to win for a very different and a very deep-seated reason. The fight is intense, but it's also poetic. It's one of the most interesting chapters, not just because it's the climax and you're finding out who wins everything, but just the way it writes about fighting it's beautiful. And so you find that their styles clash in a way that really challenges the reader's notion of what boxing represents. There is certainly questions of pain, identity, and transformation. All of it is in there. And I will say that, well, you do find out who the winner is. I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you read the book to find out. It is the very last line of this chapter. Well, you have two little subsections that follow up after that that just talk about the afterlife of the tournament and what happens to some of these girls, especially the winner. Just the way that final fight is written is so interesting, and you don't know who wins until the very last sentence. And I will let you get to it if you would like to know who won. It is a fascinating read, and I really thought it was an engaging and just a peculiar approach. I knew reading that the little synopsis of the book, I knew from the get-go that I would either love or hate this book, and I loved it. I thought that the approach was fascinating. I knew that there would certainly be elements of it that were non-traditional, that can sometimes be a little difficult to engage with, but I also knew that the structure of a tournament would still make it something that I could follow along, and that is certainly true. I actually went into Headshot maybe expecting, more boxing, considering the premise of it, but I would say that I found something certainly more layered, more intimate, and frankly more affecting, even more than I had anticipated. Obviously, it's a Pulitzer Prize. I thought all those things were possibilities coming in, regardless of the premise. Knowing that this was something that was highly regarded by the Pulitzer Prize committee also means that there is a certain expectation of its quality, and yet I'd still say that I found even more than that. The book covers the lives of these 8 teenage girls, and each with their own perspective and their own interior world. And while their personalities do differ widely, the structure offers a consistent rhythm. We learn who each girl is, why she's there, or sometimes we're not entirely sure why she's there. It still does fit that pattern, and also what drives them or what haunts them in some cases. And sometimes that motivation is crystal clear, and then other times it's buried beneath some sense of pain, or even in some cases a sense of ambivalence of why they might even be there. But each backstory is placed in direct contrast to the simplicity and immediacy of simply being in the ring and fighting. The novel excels in this tension between the sprawling complexity of a life, but the brutality that is distilled into this moment of a single fight, even though it's a tournament. And so we actually talk about, I guess it's, 6 fights total. Really, at every moment, it is only what's going on in that single fight that matters. And I would say that Bullwinkel's approach, it isn't to glorify or explain the violence of boxing, although, well, I'll let you read it. She does have an interesting little line near the end as she is reflecting on youth women boxing in general, well, boxing in general, and so she had something to say about it. But I would say that despite that, really the value of this book is how it allows this tension of violence, but also growth and development to coexist alongside the chaos, the beauty, and the mystery of adolescence. The element of maturing is a key part of this. Even if it doesn't happen then and there in the ring, you can certainly see how it's at least a really important point on the trajectory of the girls' lives as you look at the totality of their lives. That is one of the features, is you do also jump forward for each of the girls, at least to a certain extent. It's really determined, this whole book is, to tell us who these girls are. Not just how they fight, and I'd say despite the book's title and its tournament structure, there are surprisingly few blow-by-blow accounts. The action is there, but in many ways it's always secondary to the girls' internal landscapes. That narrative choice is what makes this such a powerful and fascinating, and at times a heartbreaking read. The ring is the setting, but the real battle is always something deeper, as I think you could characterize anybody's life with. And I think that the author does an excellent job of that here. So, who is this for? Well, if you're a reader who loves these character-driven fictions, especially books that dive deep into the inner lives of young people, Headshot is a great choice for you. It is especially resonant with fans of novels that blur the boundary between literary experimentation and emotional clarity. There are all sorts of novels about coming of age that you could think of that all have a variety of approaches and takeaways. I would say that this one is a rather focused one. A lot of times in coming of age novel structures, there is a sense of, well, obviously I've said chaotic many times, but a chaos in many of those books tends to be more dictated on the pattern of the school life, of an academic year. This one, because it's focused on a single weekend, I would say that this is a peculiar and a wonderful form of a coming of age story that I found just really engaging. So I would say, specifically in contrast to those coming of age stories, this is certainly one of them, and it's a distinct one that I would encourage anyone that likes coming of age stories to consider this book. I'd also say that you'll find this book just a strong pick for anyone interested in narratives about girlhood and adolescence and the paradoxes of strength and vulnerability. And if you're a reader who appreciates stories that push the boundaries of what a sports novel can be, stories that care more about, say, identity and perception and purpose than the outcome of the match, then you'll likely find Headshot exciting, and its restraint and its control to be a bit of a revelation. Who is this not for? Well, Headshot might not be the right fit for readers who want a more traditional sports narrative, one centered on high-stakes action in the ring with dramatic victories or detailed play-by-play accounts. The tournament, it grounds the novel, but it's not really all about who wins and loses, at least not in every match. It's really about who these girls are and what brought them to this moment. And the storytelling style is, as I've said, non-linear, experimental. So if you prefer straightforward plots or stories that tie up every thread, this one may feel a bit loose or a bit abstract. It also leans into emotional nuance and ambiguity. Some characters don't change much, and some parts of their stories are left intentionally unresolved. So if you're looking for a neat, uplifting resolution or a book that stays entirely within the bounds of sports fiction, then Headshot may not hit the mark for you. But if you're open to something a little more unconventional, there's a lot to admire here. In summary, I'd say that Headshot is a bold, inventive novel that uses a single boxing tournament spanning just one weekend as a lens to explore the much longer arcs of the girls' lives. It's not about the sport so much as what the sport reveals. Through brief moments in the ring, Bullwinkel shows us years of longing, loss, confusion, pride, and resilience. It's an intimate portrait of what it means to be young, to be seen, and to fight for something, even if that something isn't entirely clear. What surprised me most is how little time is spent on the fights themselves. The tournament may be the spine of the novel, but the heart is in the girls' memories, their motivations, and their messy lives, their unfinished lives. If you come to Headshot expecting a fast-paced short story, you might be caught off guard a little bit, but if you're willing to follow Bullwinkel's rhythm, you'll find a quietly impactful and a beautifully written meditation on identity and competition, but most importantly, it's on that exploration of youth and maturity. Of course, I would love to know what you guys are thinking about this novel, or maybe any of the other novels that were chosen for the Pulitzer Prize, or if you have read this author's series of short stories, please let me know your guys' thoughts on any of that in the comments. I really want to know what you're thinking. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out my playlist, or if you're interested in something else, please go check out any of my other videos. Don't forget, the name of the channel is Spencer Reads Everything. I hope you can find something of interest to you, whether it is YA books, whether it is fantasy, whether it is nonfiction. I really hope that I have something that just might appeal to you. And if you're enjoying my videos, please share them. The more people that know about the channel, the more videos I can make. And don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.